In this presentation, we will analyze the forms within the vendor section, this time concentrating on the bill. As we concentrate on the bill, remember you want to think of the bill as a form of a bill. This is the form that we're going to be data inputting for the bill within QuickBooks Online. Here we are in the free file provided by QuickBooks, which you can find if you search on QuickBooks Online Test Drive, Craig's Design and Landscaping. We're now looking at the vendor section. If we go back to our desktop version, just to take a look at that vendor section up top, the flow chart, we are considering the bills and then the pay bills. You'll recall the bills increase the liability of accounts payable and the related expense, and then the pay bills will decrease the cash and decrease the accounts payable. We're focusing here on the bills side of things. So let's see if we can find that bill form over in QuickBooks. And remember, you want to think of this as a bill. The invoice is the thing we sent out. The bill is going to be the form that we input. It's kind of the data input form that we think in QuickBooks, and the data input form is what's going to be driving the journal entry that will then populate in terms of the financial statements. So I'm going to go to the new button up top. We're in the vendor section and we're looking for that bill. We want to go to the bill. Now the bill screen will look very much like the check screen. So you have a lot of the data input screen will be pretty much identical. However, instead of saying check at the top, it will say bill at the top. When you see the term bill at the top, you want to think that the account that will be affected is accounts payable. The liability will then be increasing. We would then need to choose a vendor. So typically, if you think of the vendors, they will be similar in nature. If you had the vendors in there before, then you're going to have, last month, the phone bill and so on is going to be similar to the current month. And the fact that that is the case will make it easier to populate the vendors. Now, we're now going to have to set up the vendors in order to make the data input into the bills easy. However, we don't usually need as much information for the vendors. Like, I don't really care about my phone company's contact information in those forms, really. I mean, it might be good to have it, but all I really need to know is who am I paying and how much am I paying, as opposed to the customer side, where I really do care because I really want to send them my newsletter and tell them about all the stuff that I have to sell and everything. So just note, you may notice we don't have as much detail in terms of Bob's Burger Joint here. We don't have the address and whatnot. We're probably okay with that. I probably don't need to list out the address in QuickBooks, although more detail is always good. And then we're going to have the terms. So you could select the terms. I'm going to say 30. And then we could select the date, the bill date. I'm going to keep it there as of the 12th. 30 days later, then would be 2/11. And then we got the category details. So note, sometimes it'll basically help and allow you to help populate the details based on the people that we ended up paying. So Bob's Burger Joint, you would think would be populated and indicate that it would be some kind of meals and entertainment or something like that in terms of the expense category. So if I select the drop down, then I could find the expenses. I'm typically going to be in the expenses. I'm going to pick meals and entertainment. And again, that could help in that if you have the next time you go to Bob's Burger Joints, then it may then help you to populate automatically, or you could look at the prior transaction for Bob's Burger Joint to see the category that will be populated for it. Then we're going to scroll through here. We could put a description. I'm going to put the amount of 150. Now, I'm not going to get into the billable and taxable. We'll talk about that later. So we'll keep that here. Now note that if you were writing a bill for something that had inventory involved, then you'd go down to the item detail down here. So if I was buying something that I'm buying as inventory, I'd have to set up the item, and the reason for that is because I'd want to track the inventory, and therefore I need the more detail than just the account, but also the item. So I'm not going to be dealing with that right now. We're going to keep it at the meals and entertainment. So what's this going to do? It's going to be increasing. You'll recall bill means that it's going to be increasing the accounts payable, increasing like the bad thing, increasing the liability, increasing the thing showing that we owe someone money in the future. And then the other side is going to go to an expense account called the meals and entertainment. Let's go ahead and say save and new and see if we can do another one here. I'm going to say save and new, and let's see if we can pick up another vendor, and let's make this vendor the telephone. So we have more detail on the telephone information. And notice this one populated for us already, right? It picked up the category already for us down here. It's basically duplicating what happened in the last transaction that we made the telephone bill. Now, the amount may be different this time. I'm going to go, well, the amount's different. Everything else remains the same. That's nice. What's this going to do in terms of the transaction? it's going to be increasing. Bill means a payable. The payable is going to be increasing. The other side is going to go to the expense, utilities expense for the telephone bill. Let's go ahead and say save and close and then analyze our reports to see if that is indeed the case. So I'm going to say save and close. And let's open up our reports again, our trusted reports down here. We're going to go to the reports. We're going to open up that profit and loss, which should be a favorite report up top. So we're going to open up our favorite report of the profit and loss. Then I'm going to scroll back up top, changing the dates from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20, January through December 2020. Then run that report. Once the report is run, we're going to copy that report or duplicate the tab on it. Going to go up to the tab up top, right click on that tab. We will then duplicate that tab. So there we have the duplication of the tab. Let's go back to the first tab, do the same thing for the other favorite report, that being the balance sheet report. We're going to go back to the reports down on the left-hand side. We're going to go to the balance sheet type of report. Within the balance sheet type of report, we are going to change the dates up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. And notice I'm tabbing through, and that's the fastest way you can enter the date if you're going to just manually enter the date, just with 01/01/20 tab. And then I'm going to run that report. So let's run that one. And then I'm going to make a new tab with that report. I'm going to right click on it and duplicate. So we have our trusty 2 financial statement, most important reports up top, that being the profit and loss, otherwise known as the income statement and the balance sheet. Now, we see on the balance sheet what is happening is the accounts payable, a liability account. Notice the breakout up here. If I hide the assets, I'm in the liabilities. So now I'm in liabilities. I'd hid that with the little triangle. So a little triangle thing. And then I'm going to be down here in the liabilities, the accounts payable. That's the one I want. I'm increasing and decreasing the size of the screen fairly ineffectively. There's what we want, and I'm going to go into this accounts payable by selecting it. Now we're drilling down from the end result, the report, going back to the data, and there's our trusty 2 bills. So we have the one bill for the telephone and Bob's Burger. So we're going to go to the right. Those are our bills. If I was to select one of them, then of course it would take us to that screen, the bill screen. So there is our bill screen. If I close this back out, notice that in the detailed report here, in the transaction report, it tells us that the type of form that we're using is a bill. And that's really important. You want to think about it as a data input form. Everything is driven in QuickBooks with some type of data input form, which drives the journal entry that's being recorded, the 2 accounts that will be affected. And if there's no form that drives it, then it's probably a more unusual transaction, and therefore we fall back on an actual journal entry, debits and credits. All right, so then we're going to say that that's the one side. The other side's, of course, going to go to the expense account. So let's go back. I'm going to go scroll back up top, back to our report summary. Then we're going to go to the profit and loss tab. So let's go to the old profit and loss tab. And then we put the burger. Now I'm increasing the size of the screen, control and the scroll button, if that's looking funny. We have the meals and entertainment. There's one. That's where we put the Bob's Burger. And so there it is there. And there it is there. If I was to select it, then of course we would go back into the bill. I'm going to close this back out. Now notice the accounts payable as well as the receivable that we saw in the customer section. We would like to have more detail. We'll have more reports that we will get into later with regards to the accounts payable and receivable, like who we owe and who owes us. Like, we have to detail who owes us. We'll talk about those reports later if you're wondering about that. Right now, we want to get into the main reports, those being the financial statements, balance sheet, income statement, or profit and loss. Here's the telephone. Going into the telephone, there's our other bill. So there is that. All right, and then we're going to go back up top and back to our data. So now we've entered the bill. Now, of course, the next step in our process back to the desktop version will be to pay the bill. So now we're going to pay the bill next time. We're going to basically use the pay bill feature to write checks, and you'll see that it'll be a check, but it'll be a special check within our system, indicating that it's a pay bill check, indicating that it's linked to an actual bill, and therefore decreasing the accounts payable account as we write that check.